Hey everyone, I'd like to thank you guys for coming out. We're doing troop chaplaincy, and in the program it's called something else, but I gave it the subtitle, Helping Scouts Navigate Their Youth. This is going to be a slightly different type of format from our previous sessions. We're going to run through some slides rather quickly, dry slides. This is going to be a mostly Q&A with our panel of chaplain experts. And I will introduce them here in a bit. So, first off, very common quote that we see from Lord Baden-Powell that I like in here that I'm going to use because most people only quote the very first part. The quote is, "No man is much good unless he believes in God and obeys his laws." That's typically where people stop the quote. But the quote goes on, "So every scout should have a religion. Religion seems a very simple thing. First, love and serve God. Second, love and serve your neighbor." He wrote that in Scouting for Boys. Okay. Who here is familiar with the BSA's Declaration of Religious Principle? Got one, hopefully two up here, three, four, okay? Yeah, everyone should be, because I hear this one misquoted or misreferenced frequently. The Boy Scouts of America maintains that no member can grow into the best kind of citizen without recognizing an obligation to God, and therefore recognizes the religious element in the training of the member. But it is absolutely non-sectarian in its attitude towards that religious training. Its policy is that the home and organization or group with which a member is connected shall give definite attention to religious life. Only persons willing to subscribe to this declaration of religious principle and to the bylaws of the Boy Scouts of America shall be entitled to certificates of membership. Okay, so big question, especially for a lot of LDS scouters, what is a chaplain? Over 100 years, we haven't really had to deal with it. In our local units, like, who needs it, right? It's just the young men and the young men advisors, and they're already all chaplains anyway, practically. Well, the troop chaplain is an adult who may be a troop committee member. It's an adult. The executive officer of a religious charter organization or serves in another leadership capacity. It is customary that the religious leader or an appointee of the charter organization will serve as chaplain if the troop is operated by a religious organization. A troop not operated by a religious organization may select a chaplain from local members of the clergy. Translation: if you are part of a Presbyterian troop, the chaplain must be approved by that Presbyterian church. If you are chartered by Joe's Tire Shop, your COR has final approval on who the chaplain is, but really you can get anyone so long as they're willing to be registered with the BSA, go through youth protection training. So if there's a member of local clergy from any church who wishes to be a chaplain, they can be the chaplain. Okay, the chaplain should provide a spiritual element for campouts and troop meetings, provide spiritual counseling when needed or requested, provides opportunities for all scouts to grow in their relationship with God and their fellow scouts, encourage scouts to participate in the religious emblems program of their respective faiths, be familiar with the chaplain aid section of the manual, work with troop chaplain aid to plan and conduct an annual scout-oriented religious observance, preferably during Scout Week in February. Okay, we just brought up a whole new term, the chaplain aid. And we've all seen the patch at the Scout store, right? Has a shepherd's crook on it. Okay, the chaplain aid is an approved youth leadership position in Scout PSA. The responsibilities of the position include encouraging the spiritual growth and awareness of each member of the troop and assisting the troop chaplain. Chaplain aid must be mature and sensitive and have earned the respect and trust of their fellow scouts. I think we can all understand why this is not a position you give to the one who hasn't even earned scout rank and is generally not quite respectful. They must be at least a first-class scout. Chaplain aid must have received or be working on requirements leading to age-appropriate religious emblem of their faith. Also, in case anyone didn't know, this is a position that counts towards leadership for anyone who is trying to get star, life, or equal.
I have I've been pushing that. Can I have, some people are surprised to find that an assistant patrol leader doesn't count towards that. So you want to be a chaplain aide or a scribe or something, but not the assistant patrol leader.
When you get a bunch of scouts all that age, all vying for leadership positions, remember, there are plenty. So you just have to look. Okay, the chaplain aide should work with the troop chaplain, member, to plan appropriate interfaith religious services during troop outings. They should encourage troop members to strengthen their own relationships with God through personal prayer and devotion and participation in religious activities appropriate to their faith. Participate in patrol leaders' council planning sessions, typo there, to ensure that spiritual emphasis is included in troop activities. Help the troop chaplain or other designated adult plan and conduct an annual Scout religious observance, preferably during Scout Week in February. Present an overview of the religious emblems program at troop meetings at least once a year. And finally, help the troop chaplain or other designated adult recognize troop members who have received the religious emblems, perhaps during a troop court of honor. It does have a bit of an asterisk there. Most religious emblems are actually given to the recipient during their own church worship or service, but you can recognize them during troop activities. Okay. This is kind of confusing to a lot of people who probably never had a chaplain's aide. So quick question here, actually, and I'll defer to the experts. Can you have a chaplain's aide without a chaplain? Gentlemen?
I haven't seen it, so I'm sure you can, probably, but you might have a sort of an absent chaplain that's not there all the time, but I don't know. I only see it together.
The real question is, what is a chaplain? And the fact that a chaplain can be one person or a number of people who come and take turns, and so working with the troop. And so for it to really work, you need to have that mentor for the chaplain's aide to help him learn, because there's a lot of dynamics that go on with encouraging people to seek their own religious faith. And so I would say that it's very difficult to have a chaplain's aide without a chaplain.
And it seems quite the same way that the SPL, or Senior Patrol Leader, has a mentor in the Scoutmaster. The chaplain's aide has a mentor in the chaplain.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think that relationship needs to take place in order for that scout, in order to learn and do his position properly. As a quartermaster, we need to have the equipment manager on the committee work together in order to help him learn what he needs to do as a quartermaster. And there's several other adult mentor positions on the committee with the scouts that kind of see that, that same relationship.
Agreed. Got a question over here. By the way, the lovely young lady who's going to be helping us is Rachel. She'll be whisking around. So if you have a question, just raise your hand and she'll try and get to you with the mic.
Would it be inappropriate to ask a bishop to be chaplain for your troop?
Not at all. We're going to hold a lot of these. So we're going to be running through the real dry stuff where I literally copy-pasted from the BSA website, because there's going to be a lot of nuance that we're going to have, a lot of questions that aren't covered by it, and that's what these fine gentlemen are for. So we're going to power through the first part so we can get to that, but I love that. One thing I will point out here, and this is a really important thing, nowhere in here does it say that they are the morality police of your troop, right? It's not on the chaplain's aide to be the one wagging the finger, oh, hey, we don't do that in church, so we don't do that here. It's still a scout, right? Their job is very, very specific.
Well, the chaplain doesn't even have to be clergy, right? I mean, they can be an adult leader that has religious beliefs, and they can be the...
We're going to go into maybe a slight, because there is a subtype of chaplain who isn't really a chaplain. Hold on a second. They're called the rep, or the those who are watching this online after the fact, there is another session on the religious emblem of the Vanguard. But this one is the religious emblem coordinator. Now, the religious emblem coordinator can also be the chaplain. They can do both. Or it could just be someone who's just the RAC. Now, most faiths have a religious emblem. I personally think it's really cool to scroll through all of them and see how they all look. I think they're really, really neat. I think it's kind of lazy, some of them that just use the same one as other ones. Please cut that out of the video. I would hope everyone has their own, insignia. I think that's cool. But they have a great opportunity to partner with local clergy. Reach outside of your own faith. You are going to have scouts, hopefully, who are of different faiths. Which means that if you have one who is part of a local mosque, you, as the REC or as the chaplain, are going to need to reach out to their local clergy so that they can help move the scout along in their own religious emblem. Okay. This also helps reinforce the VSA's overall values with religious emblems. Studies have proven that scouts are more engaged when they also have a religious emblem they're working towards.
Just comment on that too. I don't know if any are aware, but most of the religious emblems, you don't have to be a member of that faith to earn it. If you want to encourage your youth to learn about the others in their unit, work on them together.
Yeah, that's an awesome thing. That is actually a great way to help them learn to kind of look outside. I have a youth who is Hindu, and the rest of my youth are all LDS. And we had to go from teaching them that, oh, hey, Zook, I think that this person just prayed wrong. No, he didn't. He did it in his own way. It's a great learning opportunity, which can then tie into things like citizenship in the world or citizenship in society. Got one in the back.
Just a comment. I grew up here in Salt Lake area and such, and the first time I went to a scouter service was when I visited a section conclave down in Vegas about 15 years ago. And that was eye-opening to see where there was a worship service that had a mix of faiths throughout it. There was some LDS, and then there was some stuff I went, wait, I don't know that song or that hymn. Or, oh, they prayed a little different. It's like, it was very eye-opening, and I'm glad I did. I wish there had been more of that go on up here during that era.
So without further ado, thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. We have Dawn Larson, PhD. Dawn is a retired professor of sociology at Utah State University and has been in scouting since 1960. His adult scouting began in 1972 when he served as unit committee member of Boy Scouts of the Philippines. He's been a Cub Master, OA Chapter Advisor, Assistant Lodge Advisor, 15 years as a Commissioner, both Roundtable Unit, District, and Zone. Served on the Council, Executive Board, and Wood Badge, and has been awarded the Silver Beaver. He and his wife Rebecca have served on the National Camp Assessment Team for nearly 20 years. He's a BSA Certified Chaplain with 20 years at Blue Mountain Scout Camp, 6 years at National Camp School Chaplain Section Faculty, and Administration Section Faculty. We also have Scott Farron, Doctorate of Education. Scott was born at a very early age and then immediately headed to the mountains. He has worked as a cowboy, whitewater river guide, forest firefighter, and has lived in the Andes Mountains for 2 years. He can teach you just about any outdoor hobby you can think of and will make sure you know everything you need to know to keep you safe while doing it. Scott has years of experience as Scoutmaster and has been awarded District Award of Merit and the Silver Beaver. He served as LDS Chaplain at Philmont Scout Ranch from 2018 to 2021. He also has multiple degrees, including a doctorate in education from Harvard, though he'd never brag about that, and is an emeritus professor of education at BYU. He currently works as a deputy sheriff for Utah County, and he doesn't know this, but his daughter got to write that bio.
That's where they I'm thinking, did David write that?
Oh, I know who wrote it.
Scott can also repair a Suburban to save a stranded scout troop in sub-zero weather using nothing more than a twig.
That happened at yeah, Klondike.
I am Zook. I am a Scoutmaster of Troop 72. I have no additional letters at the end of my name. I'm generally unqualified for whatever task has been assigned to me. I was raised agnostic, and when I was a scout, I would brag how atheist I was. As a scout, I got to learn reverence for others' belief in God through my scoutmaster, who himself was not religious. Okay? I'm now a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I work for them as a server administrator. So, the floor is yours for questions. I have a couple in here that we can go to if we need some prompting, but...
Can I just ask a couple of questions? First, the current chaplain for the Latter-day Saints is Mark Sanger right here at Philmont. David Wilson did it. He was appointed actually by Brigham Young, so he was in Philmont for a lot of years. He knew Mr. Phillips directly. I mean, how many years was it, David? 14 golden years.
President Young gave you your beard card directly?
That beard card directly. But can I just quickly ask, and I think it'll help both of us, how many here, thinking of, you're either involved in a pack, or a den, or a troop, or a crew, or a ship, as it were. How many of you are in one that is only Latter-day Saints? Raise your hand. So there's 2 of you, and when recruitment goes on, that can change. The rest of us, how many have more than half are Latter-day Saints where you are? Or not Latter-day Saints, I mean, where you are, or not Latter-day Saints. Yeah, okay, so we have that mix. Then there's kids, and like my troop in Provo, they're not used to seeing non-Latter-day Saints much, but we have 2 or 3 in our troop now. So I just wanted to get that context of what we're dealing with, and by the way, it's a beautiful world, so.
So I got a question to lead off with here, and I think this kind of requires, this is kind of the elephant in the room as well. What is a chaplain's job if you are LDS, and most of your troop is LDS, but you have the 1 or 2 youth, or 3 or 4, who either aren't or aren't as active? Is it to educate them, convert them, strengthen them? What is a chaplain's job? What would you do?
Do any of that? Okay, good. Sure. I just talk less.
I think you're on.
Yeah, switch it up and it lights up.
It would go on. Let me give you an example. My first summer at Scout Camp as a chaplain.
But mostly LDS kids.
Mostly LDS kids. Though we did bring in troops from other places that were Catholic or Assembly of God or whatever. But generally, we're 95% plus LDS. But those kids had no idea if there were non-LDS in their troops. They were just oblivious. They thought everybody was the same. And so it was sort of important for them, if they are planning on doing anything as a member of the church, like going on a mission and knowing how to talk to people who don't believe and think the way they do, to have some of those experiences. And so one of the things I like to do as a chaplain is we would have daily Scouts Hall service first thing in the morning before breakfast. And so we start out the day. By middle of the week, we would always have a prayer to begin with and a prayer at the end, and we'd always say, prepare yourself for prayer in the manner you're accustomed to. I mean, it's almost stereotypical. And everybody's taking their hat off. And I had a yarmulke. I put my yarmulke on. And they would look at me and not understand exactly what was happening. And then I would say the Hebrew prayer. And then I'd explain why we've done that. So not everybody shows reverence by taking their hat off. Some people show reverence by putting a hat on to demonstrate that there is a power higher than themselves. And not everybody prays in the same way. Well, the first time I did that, said that Hebrew prayer, I had a staff member come up to me with tears streaming down his cheeks. He said, "You may not know it, but I'm Jewish, and I appreciate the fact that you gave something to me that I can share with those around me." And so that happened again and again and again, and the boys learned from that experience. And the ones who needed that had that experience. And so every one of our boys, whether they're LDS or non-LDS, need to have a chance to learn how to show. I mean, we stand and start scout meeting with the scout oath and law. and we say these words, but here's a subtle way to learn how to live those words with the boys that are around you without showing disdain for those boys or making fun of those boys because they're different. And it's a great way that we grow together in our reverence.
Can I piggyback on that, or do you want to go on to something else?
Unless someone raises their hand, go right ahead.
Well, let me just go briefly from a professor, just cross your fingers. I don't think the chaplain's aide needs to be the morality police, but the chaplain's aide needs to have dumb jokes and candy and uplifting things. The chaplain, so, right, David taught me this, and Mark, I hope, has picked it up. I always have Tootsie Roll Pops. It's been a tradition at Philmont forever. You've had some. and so you'll be driving the backcountry, there'd be a tired-looking, troop, and I'd say, send me your tired, your weak, your need to have Tootsie Roll Pops, but send me your chaplain's aid. The chaplain's aid would come up, I'd explain, here's what you do, give everybody these, here's some extras, and you know roses, thorns, and buds, everyone knows that, have your guys, and then I'd say where they go here, has everyone been kind to each other? Have you been letting somebody lag behind? I'm reminding them of what we want them to do, and that the chaplain's aid should be kind of helping on reminding ourselves we're not a bunch of animals that eat first when the food's there. We're a crew of brothers and sisters of scouts. And so we hope the chaplain's aid will do that. By the way, how does the chaplain's aid get selected? They're elected. And from my experience at Philmont, because we see a bunch of them we see hundreds of them every summer. They're quality guys. You don't elect someone as a chaplain aide, guys and girls, I should say, unless they're really kind of deep. And so I'm going to suggest that that's the same thing, and learning, especially for Latter-day Saints that are in Utah and some other places, learning that God can be addressed by other people, that they can worship with us. At the chapel at Philmont, most of the time in the devotions in the evenings, the predominant, if not everybody was there, was not Latter-day Saints in the last year or so. And that's because they came out of respect. And I would do what I did with Latter-day Saint groups. If I see a Latter-day Saint group, I'd say, will you do the prayer? Will you lead the music? Will you do this? Will you bear a testimony? Or whatever, which we're used to doing that with the young priesthood voters. And I started doing it with these other scouts because they're that quality, if they're in scouting, doing their duty to God. And so getting them to think, and I never had anything weird or flaky happen with a prayer or a testimony or something from people who were either LDS or not LDS. And so I think part of it is, seeing a role for them and for a chaplain. For Latter-day Saints, it's a little more awkward of who the chaplain is, so that was a good point or question. Then it could be anybody, and it could be your bishop if you wanted to, if you'd asked them to.
I agree.
But they also need to have, kind of dumb jokes available to them. We would walk around as the rabbi and a priest and a Mormon elder, and we'd turn to each other and we'd walk in somewhere and say, what is this, some kind of joke? Because it's just, you got to be